I'm Estelle Bingham, and this is the Love Purpose Connection podcast. Here on Love Purpose Connection, I want to explore how to discover and really develop the secrets of a good life. I'm a holistic therapist and healer, and so over this series, I'll be sharing frank, inspiring, sometimes raw, often joyful conversations with a different guest each time, exploring just what those three words really mean, and also, crucially, how you can discover and develop them in your own life. Today, I'm talking to the psychic and medium Sandra O'Hara, who's been communicating with spirits since she was 4 years old. You may have seen her recently in the Netflix series Surviving Death. I was particularly intrigued to talk to Sandra because she's so respected and well known as a psychic, both in the UK and in the States, and also because she's helped me personally. You'll be hearing more about that in our conversation. Whether you believe in spirits or not, I suppose what we're really talking about here is human connection and interaction, and that's more important than ever in these days of isolation. For me, Sandra's work reveals something very raw and precious about the way we all love, the way we grieve, and the way others can help with that process. Sandra, I'm so happy that you're with us.
It's an honor. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm over the moon, Sandra. And the reason why is because there are so many mediums and psychics and channelers out there. And I hear about so many all the time. And clients come to me and say, oh, I've got this psychic or I've seen this medium. And I'm always interested in finding a good person because I read for other people. But to find someone that actually can read for me, I'm just like, oh, when I find someone, I'm over the moon. And when I finally got a reading with you, I booked up a year in advance, and it was the perfect date because I lost my father. And I traveled to Barbados, and our session was the day after his funeral.
And of course, you might have asked me for a specific date, but not have gotten it, you know? So I always say to people, you get your reading on the day it's meant to happen.
The day it's meant to happen. So we had a soul contract there. And I was looking at the sea, and I sat with you. We were on Skype, and you got Dad. He came through. I hadn't mentioned anything. Then you said to me, he's with your German Shepherd, with a big German Shepherd that he really likes. And this was a German Shepherd that we'd rescued from Battersea Dogs Home. He was saying, oh, he really likes her, and he's playing his saxophone. I mean, you had it all. And I just feel that those moments are so profoundly healing.
Profound, yeah. Because, you know, you can get readings and they're quite vague, but they sound good. They're not specific. Do you know what I mean? And this is how I learned this lesson very well, to have no filter. I don't own the information. The person sitting in front of me owns the information. This lovely old lady came for a visit many, many years ago. He came for a reading, and it was very obvious that her husband had passed and she wanted this connection. So I started the reading. The husband came through, gave her a lot of details, of which she agreed with. But all the way through the reading, I kept seeing monkeys. And this is where you have to switch off your human side because, you know, I'm looking at her going, she's this little old lady from Dublin. So what the hell would she have to do with monkeys? I'm not mentioning monkeys. That sounds stupid. So I never mentioned the monkeys. And she was happy enough with the reading. And she said at the end of it, it was just the husband. When he was sick, we had made a pact that whichever one of us went first, we'd try and make contact with the other. And said, I'm just surprised that he didn't mention Dublin Zoo. And I'm like, in my head, I'm going, oh, for God's sake, the monkeys. And I couldn't say to her at that point, oh, but I was seeing monkeys all through the reading, which I was. Because that would make me sound stupid, and it would also make me sound like I was trying to make it fit. Do you know what I mean? And she left, as I said, she was very happy with what she got. But I remember kicking myself afterwards and going, do you know, in future, it doesn't matter how crazy it might seem, what they show you or say to you, you just say it out because the other person is going to understand it. I don't own the information. The other person does. They own it. So what doesn't make sense to me is likely going to make sense to them. We have to trust. You know, we have to trust that what we're doing it to the best of our ability. We're doing it with respect. We're doing it with love. And we just have to trust that the person receiving the information is going to connect with that information and they're going to get a healing from that.
Yeah.
But I just think that people just need to be very cautious in whom they put their trust in as a psychic or medium or healer, and always go to somebody that they've been well recommended. You know, don't just open the phone book and pick one. And, you know, and trust me, there have been clients that have come to me and I haven't gotten anything for them, or I haven't been the right medium for them. And they've gone away and maybe been unhappy. But I'm the first to own it. I'll say to somebody, I'm not happy with that reading, so I won't charge them, or I'll offer them another reading instead. Just be open with it and just be honest with it. We're not the oracle, you know?
And I want to come back to that, but I want to start with your story, because the feeling of spirit came very early to me, like it came very early to you, but it kind of got handed down, like my mother's psychic, my great grandmother's psychic. So I'm just interested in your story. Was that something that was in your female line?
It is actually in my female line, but wasn't practiced before I came along. So my grandmother in her younger years was very well known for it. And she practiced it, but then she gave it up when she was still raising her family and things like that. So it wasn't, it was there in the family line, but it wasn't practiced. So it wasn't spoken of when I was a child, And so I was about 4, is probably my earliest memory that I have of spirit contact. And I was in bed one night, and I remember it quite clearly. And I'm phobic about pigeons. There's a whole story to that, which involves Trafalgar Square and pigeons landing in my curls, which wasn't funny. And I woke, I kind of had this sensation as if somebody was like pinching my toe. And I got it into my head that there was a pigeon in the room. So I was a bit freaked out. And so I sat up in the bed, but at the end of the bed, there was I just saw this little old lady. And I don't know whether you know the storybooks, Mrs. Pepperpot.
Yeah, I remember Mrs. Pepperpot.
Yeah, so she was like Mrs. Pepperpot with the tight bun on her head, and small and dimples in her cheeks. And she just seemed really friendly. So it didn't seem to strike me that there's a strange lady sitting at the end of your bed, Sandra, and you're more worried there's a pigeon in your room, And so she started talking to me and telling me why I was here, and that I was going to help a lot of people, and I was going to pass on messages, and it wouldn't always be understood, and I was just to be fine with it. It was going to be okay. And I just went back to sleep, and that was it. And then shortly after that, my spirit guide showed himself, and so I call him Percy because his name is not Percy, but I couldn't pronounce the name that he gave me, which I believe now, when I think back, was Perseus, like a Greek-sounding name. But I couldn't pronounce it at age 4. So he just became Percy and has remained Percy ever since. So that was kind of like my first remembrance. And when I started to see spirits, they showed themselves to me as if I was looking at a real person sitting in the room. So, my mum we'd go visit friends or family, and I would say, who's that person sitting in the chair? And people would look at this empty chair. And I'm like, what's wrong with them? Why can't they see this person? Because I just assumed everybody could see the person. So, I think for quite a period of time, much younger years, my mum, when we go visit somebody, I'd be told, don't be telling them things. She literally had her hand clamped over my mouth, and it was like, you're not to mention anybody in the room that we can't see.
So it's interesting because with my mother, she was psychic and kind of in touch with that energy. So it made it really so much easier for me to just integrate this life. And I'm kind of interested in how it was for you, because you're obviously Irish, you were born in London, but was it a kind of cultural fear? Because there's so much.
Yeah, there was that aspect to it, and so certainly, after a number of years living in London, we moved back to Ireland. And so that was even stranger, because I moved from literally Portobello Market down a laneway in the countryside in Ireland. First time I'd seen a cow, and it was like, all these strange things, and the silence actually was deafening. It was that quiet. I was used to fire engines and the noise of people in the market and all that kind of stuff. So it just kind of freaked me out, basically. And again, Ireland back then, not so much now, very Holy Catholic, and the church was massive and in Ireland. And so people, I think they kind of thought it was the devil's seed or something. This was just too weird for them, and they just were not into it. And of course, then I was coming into my teenage years. So obviously as a teenager, it's not necessarily something that you want to be known for. So they weren't great years, And I suppose for me, it was a lonely path, because my parents and my family just were not into it. So it was just not really spoken of. And it was only kind of in my adult years, maybe around 26, 27, that I actually met other people that were healers and psychics and mediums, and then kind of found my tribe from there. They'd be telling me about the books that they'd read or workshop that they'd done. And see, I didn't do any of that. And in a way, I kind of envied them. But then at the same time, I realized, no, I actually prefer the way it happened to me, because things were explained to me in very simplistic terms. And, so I didn't feel the need to kind of do the workshops or the books then at that point. But Yeah, it was always interesting to listen to people and their kind of entrance into it or their experiences. But certainly till about 26, I'd say I was very much a lone wolf in the whole thing.
That's what I was going to ask you, because one of the things that happens on the spiritual path, it seems to be just a hallmark of it, is there is this deep loneliness and sort of carrying, an awareness of the world that's very particular. And that loneliness is a thing.
Absolutely. And it certainly seems to be part of the terms and conditions of being a psychic or a medium.
Yeah.
I've met very few that have sort of had it since their childhood. And they probably have done, but didn't realize it. A lot of people come to after trauma. Sometimes you're traumatized into being a psychic or a healer, because of an event that took place, and then it suddenly opens. And but I've always found myself saying to people, to be a psychic or a healer, it's never an easy path. I enjoy being it. I don't want to be anything else, but there is a lot that comes with it. So you certainly get to experience a lot of hardships in life, particularly to do maybe say with events or relationships in your life, stuff like that. And I think it's because you have to experience it in order to be an empath towards other people that are going through it. And there have been times when I thought, I don't know why I signed up for this. Do you know what I mean? I don't know why they gave this to me.
Well, I remember when I was a teenager, I thought the last thing I want to do is do this. And I ran from it because my close friends knew that, they'd come to me, I'd do the cards, I'd pick things up, I'd see things, I'd feel things. But I was like, I do not want to do this. I didn't want to be a healer. And I did run from it. And I became a TV presenter instead. I was like, right, I'm going to manifest something else. But to be of service, it comes, it gets you, doesn't it? Around 27, it's like, it's here and it's your purpose. But I do also agree with you. It's hard work. You are constantly in relationship in such a sort of profound way with people's journeys on the planet and with spirit. And like you say, you can't, when you're really initiated, you cannot get away with anything.
Absolutely. But I wouldn't change it for the world. And my daughter, she has a gift that I think is even stronger than mine. But I'm delighted that she doesn't, she will use it to tap into situations and stuff. But she's a marine biologist now, and she said she'd prefer to use it to communicate with the dolphins and the whales and stuff and fix all that part of the world. She doesn't really want to use it for people. And that's absolutely fine. Because did you find too, especially when you were using it as a teenager, you do sometimes wonder, the people around you, are they just around you because they want to know what you're going to say? Because I found that, there were certain people, not all people, but certain people they just want to know what you're going to tell them, or, it's kind of exciting maybe to have somebody like that as a friend. But if you need them, they're not generally there.
Yeah, they did that to you. So you're an Aries woman, like I'm an Aries woman. And as Aries, we are often the ones that people come to, but getting in touch with that part of ourselves, like I need you, that's a journey in itself. That's part of our human work, to be around people who we can lean into.
Yeah. And in essence, I'm actually a lone wolf. I'm not as bad as what I used to be, So I do enjoy my own company, but that also makes me laugh because in doing what I do, especially if I go to the States, etc. I mean, I'm dealing with large groups of people. If I'm got an audience, if I'm doing a theatre event, or or the fact that I was on Netflix, and it's like, of all the people in all the world you gave this to, do you know what I mean? You gave it to me, who in essence is shy when I meet people first. Do you know what I mean? I don't like a lot of attention, and here I am.
Let's just talk about this idea of the afterlife, which so many people are listening are going to want to understand, Sandra. So when you're sitting down with a client, or you've got a client on the phone or online, what starts to come in? What do you feel? What happens to the souls that are touching you or speaking to you? Like, give us an idea of that.
So in a lot of cases, they can actually turn up before the person they want to communicate with actually arrives. They can turn up the day before. They can be very insistent, very impatient. I have to say to them, I'm sorry, your person's not here yet, So generally what happens is when somebody comes in and they sit down, or well, these days, obviously with COVID days, it's all online and there's no difference in those readings. I tend to do them on Skype, and I do like to see the person that I'm talking to. And so I just feel the energy come in, and I ask them for specifics like a name or an event or something like that, just to start the whole thing. And then we go with it. So to me, it just feels like an energy shift. And it's like a little breeze that kind of comes around the side of my head. Do you ever feel like your hair lifting just a little bit? Yeah, so I get like a sensation of that. They can sometimes be, they want to show me things, or they want me to know how they pass. So, I might suddenly get like a sharp pain somewhere, just a moment, like just a second or a millisecond. So I could say to somebody, oh, this has happened or that has happened. You know, I had a reading there, but it was before the COVID times, and this lovely lady was sitting in my office, and her mum was talking to me, and her mum was speaking really, really fast. And, you know, I do say come in on your personality. So, you know, if somebody had bad habits or, you know, they weren't maybe the nicest to speak to, they're going to come in that way. So this mother that came in, she was very blunt speaking and very abrupt. And I have to tell them that. And I always say, listen, I have no filter. So I'm going to tell you that your mum wasn't the easiest to get on with.
Yeah.
And you can see them get a little bit taken aback, but it is true. So they do agree it. But, you know, and I explained to them, well, if I said to your mum's coming through and she's really sweet and lovely, you probably think to yourself, that doesn't sound like my mum. Don't get offended when I tell you that she wasn't the easiest person. So this lady came through, this mother, and she was not the easiest person. And she had this, I found myself when I was talking to the lady that I was jabbing my finger at her, which I never point my finger at anybody. I don't like it, and I don't like somebody pointing the finger at me, but I was jabbing the finger during the passing on the messages, because obviously the energy was there, so they could make me do things like that. And the next minute, I just said to the spirit, would you please slow down? And she jabbed the finger at me, and my eyes started to water. She actually, from spirit, jabbed me and hit my eye. And my eyes started to water. And the woman is looking at me, declined. I'm really sorry. I said, your mum's just poked me in the eye. She didn't mean to. But I said, she's going at me with her finger. And she went, oh, she did that all the time. So then she'd catch you with the finger. So you see things like that, you know. And I spend half my time, you know, when I'm giving messages, there's a lot of humor. There's a lot of laughter. It's not all tears. Spirit don't want us to be crying and don't want us to be sad. But they do understand, of course, that we are and we miss them. But they also want to bring in the humor. They love to hear us laugh and all of that. So there's been so many stories where they could easily have gotten me into so much trouble. I was in the States one time and I was in a theatre, and there was this lady, and I was talking about her husband who had passed, and I was saying, you know, he's so sorry that he wasn't so emotionally open to you, and he regrets that now, you know, and I'm going, hindsight and spirit is a wonderful thing. And the next minute I'm saying to her, now I'm in America where they, you know, they can sue you for nothing. I'm in this theatre. And I said, would you please stand up in the middle of the aisle? So she stepped out of her seat and stood in the aisle, and I came down off the steps of the stage, and I'm walking towards her. And you see, when I'm in that medium mode, me, Sandra, doesn't exist. It's the medium, you know. But there was a part of my brain going, what are you doing? What are you doing? And as I walked toward her, this is what I did. I put my two hands on her face, pulled her in, and I gave her a smacker on the lips. And I stood back and went, oh. I said, I'm really, really sorry. And she was laughing. She said, I always wanted him to kiss me with passion. I said, well, you just got it. I said, I'm sorry. And the whole place was laughing. I'm back on the stage, nearly having a heart attack going, I can't believe I just did that. I could get sued.
But you've got a massive following in the States, haven't you, Sandra?
And, I think they're a lot more accepting of it and a lot more open to it. Yes, you get some that are like a bit cookie about it, and that's fine. You get that everywhere. But I don't feel judged there. Do you know what I mean? Now, I certainly don't feel judged now in Ireland, but I certainly was in my earlier years. And I think you don't forget that. You don't forget that judgment, you know, because I know I'm a normal person. I know I do all the same things everybody else does. I have a cigarette, I drink a bit of wine, I'll swear, I'll tell a naughty joke. So, you know, I'm thinking, well, why are people thinking that I'm such a weirdo? But I'm so used to doing what I'm doing because I've done it since I was 4. It doesn't seem unusual to me.
So there's a freedom in America.
There is. That's actually the word. There is more of a freedom. Well, listen, in history, we were persecuted. The word witch has got a bad connotation these days, mainly down to kind of Hollywood and that kind of stuff. But if you were a witch, and really what were witches? They were the midwives and the herbalists and the healers, and they were the wise woman. They were drowned or they were burned. Do you know what I mean? Because they could do this. So, yeah, sometimes that memory, you know, you think, oh, I'm not putting myself out there because you're going to get persecuted. The thing is, too, when you're dealing with clients, you know, it's like you're the therapist. So that's also kind of hard, too. And I actually did go and do a psychology course because I just wanted to have that knowledge, you know. And because I did feel I was like a lot of people's psychiatrists, a lot of people's therapists. I mean, they just tell you things that you just couldn't imagine. And so you do worry about them, but I had to learn to switch that off.
I'm curious about that. And I think people listening will be really curious about how you do switch off. So how do you separate from the energy?
So I first was probably about, say around 23, between the ages of 23 and 25 when I started to take clients. And I wouldn't take that many, you know. But I found that the more the client list increased, as word got out there, I started to get really bad headaches, almost migraine-like, which I'd never had before. And I'd be fine to work, and then the minute I'd stop working or stop doing the readings, the headache would hit. And I had these for months, to the point where I convinced myself there's something in my brain, and I was talking to my doctor. And it was actually, he said to me, Sandra, do you think it might have something to do with what you do? So again, remember, I hadn't read the books and I hadn't done the workshops and stuff like that. So I was kind of figuring out all this stuff for myself, even at that age. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to have to learn to switch this, dial this down or switch this off. Because we do learn you cannot be open 24/7 to spirit message. So what I started to do, and I'm quite good at visualization. So I started to visualize a light switch in my head, to the side of my head. And so I would flick the switch, just like you're switching the lights off when you go out of a room. And after about a month of practicing that, it worked.
So that's you shutting down.
Absolutely. So now it's probably successful to about 99%. You know, there will always be that one spirit that's like adamant and they're just assisting, you know, because spirit have no manners. They just don't have any manners, and they don't have any concept of time. So they don't care whether it's 4 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I can get a little bit cross with them sometimes and just say, you're going to have to wait, you know. But 99% of the time, it absolutely does work. And so I did that. Now, of course, I do a lot of psychic cleansing, and I have my rituals. I meditate a lot, and I tune into that as many days in the week as I can. And I do that, so that grounds me. And it's very important that you do have a grounding technique. You know, I also use smudge a lot, and I use my crystals, and I take care of myself. I take time out.
Okay, so we've got a really clear understanding about how you keep yourself buoyant and robust. You've learned to really hold your space, and that's really important because you, like you say, you're a natural born empath with a very powerful gift. And I think those things are really important, whether you're working on your own abilities or not. It's just to be in the world in that way. So to meditate, to have your crystals to ground.
Yes, and I've learned to put those boundaries in.
So do you believe in reincarnation, Sandra?
I do, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I believe some people, it's their journey and it's their karma to create that space for other people. So some people, it is their karma to be healing other people or being psychic to create that bridge for other people. Do you feel like that's a past life remembrance, a past life story that you come into the lifetime with that knowledge?
Yeah, and you know, in any lifetime that has been mentioned to me, I have always, be it male or female, I've always worked with healing or with the stars or just been somebody that was perceived to be different. And one of the times I was in India and I met this blind guru, and he said to me, oh, you've walked this earth for 5,000 years. I remember laughing, going, oh my God, no wonder I'm feeling so tired, you know? And he said, this will be your last lifetime unless you decide to come back. Because I do think we, you know, when we pass the spirit, I do think we're given an option to come back. But I do believe that we, and this is just my belief, of course, I'm not saying that this is absolutely 100%, but it's my belief from what my guides have shown me, that we do have about 7 lifetimes, because we come and want to learn different things. So we come in different bodies or into different situations.
So a part of the reason why you needed to come back, why your soul chose to come back to this lifetime, was to heal that relationship, the love, you know, feeling the love and finding your tribe, to come back in and experience that belonging.
And I do feel I have that now, which makes sense what the blind guru said, that this would be my last lifetime on earth, but if I chose to come back afterwards, I would, because the same man told me, he said to me, you have a daughter, and I've only one child. I tried for years to have a child, it wasn't happening. I'd gone through the menopause when I was 23, and I had Amy when I was 34, so she was a miracle. And he said to me, you have this daughter, and I said, I do. And he said, you do know that she is a completely evolved soul, and that she's come back for you so that you can complete your lifetimes. And I've never loved anybody the way I love my daughter. She's just the best gift that I was ever given.
So when we think about love, purpose, and connection, what do those words bring up for you, Sandra?
I think for me, it's all been about my journey to find those. And I think in this lifetime, those three words fit together now for me. Whereas I think in previous lifetimes, I might have had a purpose, but I didn't have love. Or I might have had the purpose, but I didn't have the connection. But in this, I don't know whether I'm answering your question correctly, but this is how I'm driven to answer it. I feel I've got all three of those now. And I feel my daughter's arrival into my life when I was 34, she's 21 now, just brought so much love into my life. Do you know what I mean? And made sense of why I was here, and gave me a newfound love for what I did, And then, strangely enough, the lone wolf thing, when she was 17, she was going to university in Bangor in Wales. And there's only been the two of us since she was like 3. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. I felt like it was a grief that she was leaving, but I was encouraging her to go. She needs to go and do her funky thing. And, you want them to do that. So then I reconnected with old friends. And then they became my tribe. So I got that. So then that connection happened. So I think those three things have come together for me in my life now: love, purpose, and connection.
So you've really let love in, that humanity.
Yeah.
That you haven't just been of service. You've actually softened in the heart and allowed people in too.
And I think I'm still open to it. Like, I'm not in a relationship, but I think I'm still open to it. Not still. I think I'm now open to the idea of that again, because I've got lovely friends, and I have love there. I have love with my child. I have love with what I do. And you know what? If I just give a message to one person and it makes them happy, or it lets them see you're not on your own, your loved one is still with you, then my job is done.
And when we think about loved ones, Sandra, do you pick up that they're around? I mean, I pick them up as soul family, that often they're in the soul family and they come in.
Yes, we do have soul groups. And there may be some people in our family now that are not actually part of our soul group. So they may only be with us in one lifetime or just for this lifetime. And the whole purpose of coming to Earth is to learn something. But sometimes we come to Earth in order for other people to learn. And I suppose, I always had sympathy and compassion, I should say, for my clients until my own dad passed. He's gone nearly 10 years now. By the end of March, he'll be gone 10 years. And then I truly knew, because obviously I'd lost relatives, but I'd never lost somebody that I loved so much. Do you know what I mean? And was such a big person in my life. And then when he passed, and I was lucky because we knew he was dying, so I got to sit with him and we got to talk about things. And I remember him saying to me, he rang me he got diagnosed with cancer on a Tuesday, and they sent him home on the Wednesday. And up to the Friday night, he was like in great form and everything was good. So he rang me on the Friday morning, and I was due to go to his house that afternoon. I said, Sam, he called me Sam. He said, I want to ask you a question. I said, Dad, I'm going to be down in the afternoon. No, I want to ask it now. I said, all right, sweetheart, what is it? And he said, my television just turned itself on. Yeah, that's him, absolutely. And I'm laughing because my house is like Ghost Central. So he's saying to me, I want to ask you a question. So I'm going, okay, Dad, ask me the question. And he said, do you really believe there's an afterlife? Now, this is the child who's been talking about this since she was 4. So I go, duh, Dad, I'm laughing. I go, of course there's an afterlife. I said, you're going to get a great surprise. And he said, I'll hold you to that. I said, look, I'll see you in a couple of hours. But by the time I got to the house, my dad had slipped into a coma. So I think somewhere in his subconscious, he knew he wasn't going to get to ask me this question if he waited. So this was on the Friday evening, and he died on the Monday morning. But we sat with him, and because in Ireland we do a wake, and they call it a wake because you sit up with them all night. Because back in the olden days in Ireland, they may not actually have been dead. They might have been in a coma. So you had the wake because in case they woke up. That's where wake comes from. So, and it's a tradition here in Ireland. So we sat up with him anyway, but I was absolutely wall falling from tiredness, and I thought, I have to go to bed. So in my dream, remember I was born in London, we used to call it the Spike Milligan tree, but it's the old elfin oak. Have you heard of that in Kensington Park?
Yes, I know that tree.
Yes, with all the gnomes and the fairies in it. Well, we call it the Spike Milligan tree because it was Spike Milligan and his friends that put all the little characters in it. And in my dream, I'm standing at the elfin oak, Spike Milligan tree with my dad. Now, and I know he's dead. I'm an adult in the dream, and I know he's dead. And I'm going, what are we doing here, Dad? Are you okay? And he said to me, I'm perfectly fine. Now, he adored my daughter, Amy, and he was we called him a Shanachie, which is like Irish for storyteller. He could make up a story like that, like Fester the Crow and all these things, right, that he told us all our life, and he told Amy. And he said, won't you promise me you'll bring Amy? I never got to bring her here to tell her the story, because Amy was 10 at the time when my dad died. And I said, absolutely, I will. And I woke up and I thought, God, that dream was so real. And I'm coming down the stairs and my mum is upset because she hasn't got a photograph of my dad on his own. Because in all the photos, there's one of us with him. And then there's the tradition here that you put a photograph of the person on top of their coffin while the church service is being said. So I send my brother upstairs because I know there's a box of photographs that Dad had upstairs. And as he's coming down with the box, one photograph fell out and landed on the floor. And my brother picks it up and he goes, oh, look, San, it's you and Dad. And the photograph was me, aged 4, with my Uncle Dan and my dad at the Spike Milligan tree.
So he just gave you that message?
He let me know. I said, you're a dancer. I said, you obviously got a VIP straight into spirit.
He let you know it was all okay?
Absolutely. And so then I realized exactly how important the messages were to people that were receiving them. And it just changed my grieving journey completely. And, you know, the one thing that people don't talk about is death. And it's the one thing we're all headed toward, no matter our culture, our financial standing, what our belief system, we're all heading to death. You know, it comes to all of us. But I think it's the next part of the adventure. I don't think it's an end.
Sandra, do you believe in angels?
I do. I have a strong affinity with Archangel Michael, a very strong affinity with him. And yeah, I definitely do. And I feel that I've seen them and I've sensed them. And yes, I do believe in them. And I very much connect with him.
Yeah. Sandra, thank you so much for being on the Love Purpose Connection podcast.
Oh, it was my pleasure. And thank you so much for inviting me. It's always lovely to speak with you, Estelle.
If this is your last live, well, I'm really pleased that I got to meet you.
It's all right. I'll come back and haunt you in a nice way.
No haunting, please.
No haunting. I'll come back and give you loads of messages.
To find out more about Sandra, she's at Sandra O'Hara 121 on Instagram. If you have any questions about the things raised in this conversation, please do come and find me at estelle.bingham or estellebingham.com, and I'll do my very best to respond to as many questions as I can. I really hope you've enjoyed the show. Do rate it and review it if you have, and share it where you can. This podcast is produced by Sarah Cudden with exec production from Kate Taylor. It's a Feast Collective production. Until the next one, wishing you all more love, purpose, and connection.